we're able to not just start appreciating when we start turning our stories around, when we start seeing it from another way. It isn't just seeing things within ourselves, but it's also to be able to reshape on how we view the others who we've seen as kind of enemies or the bad people in our life, and start seeing them as serving a purpose in another way. So it's very healing.
Hi everyone, this is Katana Abbott, and I want to welcome you all to Smart Women Talk. Have you ever dreamed about launching an encore career for that next chapter or phase of your life? Finding something you love doing that gives you purpose can be a game changer. Women I know who have figured this out never need to retire because they're living their purpose and they're getting paid. So if you're feeling too old or irrelevant, don't worry, because today we're going to be speaking with Journey to Legacy founder Joanna Klein about rewriting your life through storytelling. Joanna believes your life story holds gems, and by reframing your experiences, you can uncover patterns, you can uncover strengths, and you can learn lessons that can reveal the path to your new future. Joanna, thank you so much for coming today. I'm so excited to have you here. You're a returning guest.
Yes, and thank you for having me back, and I'm excited to be here and to see you again.
Yes. You just came from an exciting event.
I did.
You're actually one of the speakers. What is this event that you were at?
Last week, I was one of the speakers for RootsTech, which is the largest family search conference in the world. So I actually was one of the speakers in their online event. I've been one in person as well, but because my programs are online, it made sense for me to do it online. We had a wonderful turnout and a lot of great speakers at that event for people who are interested in capturing their family story, doing family search, leaving a legacy, and preserving for future generations.
And that's your program, Journey to Legacy. Now, I know that this is not what you went to school to do, right? I want you to tell everyone, what were you doing? And then how did you end up getting into this?
Sure. I didn't go to school specifically to teach life story writing, but I did get a master's in social work, and my intention all along was to help people live better lives. And so I did have a 40-year career where I was creating programs and leading them for people for self-improvement, personal growth opportunities. But I left a position as a dean at a college, actually, to support my husband's business. He was doing real estate, and I started doing marketing. I had some interest in marketing. I was doing that for him. But when our marriage broke up, this was like in my early 60s. So I found myself without a career, without work to do. I always had really good luck getting jobs, but I tried, and I was starting to see myself as a victim of ageism. It's like, for the first time, I was getting rejected right and left, and I was trying to figure out how it is that I was going to really be able to support myself, to bring in the extra income that I wanted to be able to travel and do the kinds of things and not just live on the bare minimums, which is what I was facing at this point. Mm-hmm. And so it was a really dark time for me. My sister and mother had both passed away just within this period of time of this very painful divorce. And so some soul searching. And it was through words that I found in a book that I started to look inward and say, what is it that's really calling to me? What's really important? And the words that I read were, your life has been a good teacher and a good friend. And when I started thinking about that, that's when I started writing about how has my life been a good teacher and a good friend? And when I started looking at it through that lens, this sense of myself as a victim of these circumstances started to shift, and I started to really start having some appreciation for what it is that I had done, and even the difficult moments in my life. And by shifting that focus, I got in touch with what my heart was desiring, what really were my limitations holding me back from living the life that I wanted to live. And it truly was my own limiting thoughts, the things that I told myself I really couldn't do, that I started to question at that point when I began feeling better about my life and who I was as a person.
I think all women go through that.
Mm-hmm.
What did it feel like having that self-doubt yourself?
I've lived with it. No matter how successful I've been, and I've had a variety of proven successful careers, there was always that part of me that didn't believe I was enough. And looking at situations and saying, well, I couldn't do that. And one of the things that was in me was this entrepreneurial spirit. So I supported partners and other people. I was entrepreneurial in my positions and never saw myself as someone who could do that on my own. So when I questioned that and decided it was time to really step into it and not trying to prove anything to anybody else, which has always been my driving force for affirming my self-worth, but instead to prove to myself that I could do this and just not look at it like, well, I can't, but look at it like, what will it take to do this, is when things started to shift for me.
You talked about vulnerability. Tell us what that means, why that's so important, and how it played a role in your career in developing this business.
We can't step into something new. That's stepping out of our comfort zone without courage. And courage takes vulnerability. So for me, in this particular situation, vulnerability showed up in a couple of different ways. Number one, it was me acknowledging that I wanted to do this, but I couldn't do it alone. And all my life, I'd been that, the person who felt like I could do it all, or I should do it all, and that it wasn't okay to ask for support. And so I finally acknowledged, I want this, but I don't know really what it takes. So my first piece of vulnerability was to be able to ask for support. And I hired a coach, and I ended up hiring several different coaches to support me along the path of what felt uncertain to me or what I was unclear of how to get there. So that was one step in the vulnerability. The second part of the vulnerability that's been so important to me is my willingness to show up authentically and share my story about my own path. And that this sense of needing to wear a mask or needing to show up perfectly in order to be accepted or to be successful was actually not true at all. That what felt more aligned, more authentic, more true was being vulnerable and honest about my own trials and tribulations. And that then is a huge connecting piece. And it allowed me to be honest about what I wanted, what I needed, and who I was.
Can you talk about finding the story in our life?
So there's a number of different answers to that. The first one is, as far as finding our story, it's the story that I mentioned before, the story that we're telling ourselves about what we can't do, even though it's something that we want to do. Like, I really admire people who do, like, I know someone who's doing this 2,000-mile bike ride from all along the eastern seaboard, and I am so impressed with her, and I admire that, and I don't want to do that, But what I did want to do is to really show up fully, to feel passionate, to be able to give to others, to be able to not be afraid, not to play small anymore. And that story had been in my head that I am not someone who can show up and who can be in front of a camera like this and who can own a business. So that's part of the story, is what is this story that something that's truly in our heart, but the story that we're telling ourselves is keeping us from getting there. So that's one piece of it. And then the other piece, and this is part of what this is a big part of what I teach in both my life story writing and my life review class. And that's taking a look at our own story from the perspective of, what did we learn from these experiences? not just the good stuff that we remember and those stories that we share when we get together with other people and we have these different stories that we like to tell about ourselves, but those ones that we don't want to look at. And by not looking at them, it's not like they don't still exist within us. They do, and they can come out in ways that are unhealthy. I mean, can actually be carrying illness because we've stuffed these down. So instead, let's look at them from what I call this bird's eye view. It's like a lens of a camera where you're always zoomed in, and now we're going to zoom out and we're going to look at the bigger picture and try to see what else was going on, and then understand how, as difficult as that situation was, we ultimately gained something from it. And that's the reframing that we do in our life story writing class, in our life review class. It helps us see there was so much more that I wasn't paying attention to. So we're essentially, without changing the facts, we're rewriting the meaning that we're giving to our stories. And in doing that, it creates a sense of empowerment. And from there, we feel more empowered to either, if we're wanting to write stories to share with others, and we get a better sense of why they're meaningful and what's important to share rather than just the details and the anecdotes. It's like, what do we gain from it? If it's for what's our next chapter, like, we're talking about now, then this rewriting our story changes the narrative we have in our head about what we can and can't do. And, 80% of our thoughts are negative. We know about this negative bias that we carry. Our memories tend to go towards the things that were negative and shameful and all, but in fact, that's how we're wired. But reality is so different than that. So we have to really intentionally make
Yes. So you're actually saying to go back and pull those stories out, and write about them, but then to be able to rewrite that story in a very positive way, the same story, but pull the positive part out of it. Right. Or use that experience to become more confident today because that was such a great lesson and a game changer in your life, and instead of being ashamed.
Absolutely. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be written. Like, that's why I started the life review course, because not everyone wants to write their story, but they want to take inventory and take stock, and they don't want to write it down, but they want to understand their story. And so through this framework that I've created, we're able to look back and do just what you say. Again, not change the facts, but start having that important appreciation for the different things that happened. And with that comes that sense of, I have choice in the meaning that I give to my story. I can learn from that. I don't have to make the same mistakes. I think regrets are actually guideposts for us on how we can do something differently. I have had so many opportunities to remember now, I handled it this way before and that didn't work well. I'm seeing that. I'm seeing the pattern, and now I have a choice to behave differently. I've got a woman in my life review course. We met yesterday. She's 80 years old. And by doing this process, she realized that she's always played small. She's always deferred to others. And she's in this group, in this place where she lives, and there are people who are coming in and sharing their story. And she has got a fascinating story, originally from Europe, and an immigrant that came over, and a lot of hardship that she overcame. But they're having people come in and share their story. And she was like, I'm ready to get up there and share my own story. And she would never have done that before. But looking at how she's had this pattern of holding back, even though she's got an incredible story. But so we were all just cheering. We were so happy that she's ready to take that step. So it can happen anytime.
What was it like seeing her up there at her age, and she had held this in, and sometimes, we hold them in because we don't think it's valuable. We don't think, or we get too nervous, right? We're afraid, because you can get really locked up here in your voice. Yeah. She must have transformed on stage. That's where I'm going with this. Did you see it?
Well, she just announced at our life story writing group session that she's willing to do this. That she
Okay.
wants to do this. So she hasn't done it yet, but just the
Okay.
step of saying, raising her hand and saying, I want to do this was huge for her. She's now stepping into her comfort zone. There's courage. There's vulnerability, all of that now. And
Yeah.
I love it because she's our elder in the group. We've got women from the ages of 40 to 80 in this life review course. And it's so much fun that she's our elder, to
Oh, how wonderful.
share. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
What kind of lessons are people finding that they're able to bring into their life today to help them with where they want to go?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I mean, one of my favorite ones to tell was one of my clients who's now in her late 70s, early 80s, was writing about during the 1970s when her children were in school. She'd been a full-time mom caring for them, and she wanted to go back to school to be a teacher. And she was in a marriage that was very strained. So she was, sensing that it was challenging marriage at that point. Things weren't going well. But she approached her husband and asked for support. She'd found a school where she could go to locally. She wanted support. She wanted to use some of the money to pay for tuition. And he said no. Even though the kids were in school, she could have gone without disrupting anything within the family. And this was a time in the 1970s when you had to get your husband's signature or a man's signature at a bank if you wanted a loan. That's why she was asking him. And she went to the bank on her own and spoke with the loan officer, who said, no, I need your husband's signature. And she's like, well, he's not agreeing to it. She was sharing the story saying she just plopped herself down and refused to leave the bank until finally the loan officer agreed to give her the loan. And so she's sharing this and she's like, well, what's the lesson in this story? And I said, Barbara, this story, my husband was a jerk, I'm like, Barbara, this story is not about your husband. This story is about you standing up for what you believe, for going after what you wanted, and for not taking no as an answer. And her eyes just got like saucers. She was like, oh my gosh, I never saw it that way. And from that point forward, she started seeing, oh my gosh, I've done a lot of really courageous things. The marriage didn't end up working, and she had seen her husband as this bad guy, but now she was like seeing him as the gift, the thing she needed in order to really stand up for what she wanted and believed in. So we're able to not just start appreciating when we start turning our stories around, when we start seeing it from another way. It isn't just seeing things within ourselves, but it's also to be able to reshape on how we view the others who we've seen as kind of enemies or the bad people in our life, and start seeing them as serving a purpose in another way. So it's very healing. That's just one. I can go on and on. There's so many stories. We look at how indecisive so much of our life is. We stand in that place of indecision, of a fear of the unknown. And so when we start looking back and seeing how many times we've missed opportunities or have just stayed put and been uncomfortable by tolerating things that we really don't want, and we start seeing those patterns and start deciding, I don't want to live my life this way anymore. So lots of patterns show up in how we've been in relationship, how we've set boundaries or not set boundaries, or where we've, played small, or where we have missed opportunities that we now can say, that was just me getting in my own way.
And I think there's probably a lot of forgiveness.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's part of it. Compassion for yourself, compassion for others. And that's one of the things that I include in my course, because I think it's really important, if we are going to go back and do this, that we have some tools for forgiveness, self-forgiveness, compassion. There's a lot of really good tools out there now of taking these steps that can draw up some painful memories, taking them in a way that really can be kind to ourselves and to bring compassion to ourselves and compassion to the other people in our life. And people always are in control of this process. If someone listening is thinking about doing this but afraid about certain stories, you're in control of what it is that you choose to look at. You're always in control.
So the stories are there, and really we can change, we can reframe how we see them, and then we can find the gift and use it to help propel us forward for where we really want to go.
Absolutely. And to honor the things that we've done well.
Yeah.
That's another thing that we tend to do as women is like, we get so much done and it's just like we just wipe our hands and next. It's like we don't take a pause and reflect and say, wow, I really did that. When I think about what it took, I mean, I know a lot of your story. It's like, wow, what it took, it's huge.
And I hid it and I was embarrassed of it. You've talked about the vulnerability. And when I shared it, that was the power. That changed me to see, oh, I wasn't judged. But, to go around carrying something that you're feeling guilty for or embarrassed of, and to find out that's really a gift and that's your strength now for the work you want to do. So
absolutely. In one of my life story writing classes, a woman shared about her eating disorder, and two other women ended up saying, "Oh my gosh, I had an eating disorder too, and I felt ashamed to talk about it." And it opened it up, and healing happens, and just all of this. We think we're so alone in what it is that we've gone through, and the fact is like, so many people have gone through similar things, and we have nothing to be ashamed of, nothing. It's all been part of our journey. And by owning it, we embrace ourselves. We're basically blocking off parts of ourselves by not embracing it. So it's saying, this is who I've been, this is where I've come from, this is how I've handled it. And I now, with intention, get to choose how to go forward. My next act, I get to do it from this mindful, very empowered, intentional place.
You shared how looking at writing your story and then examining and reframing, you were able to find the courage and your skills to be able to do the work you're doing today. Is there anything you want to add to that? Because I don't know if you got to share everything about how doing the story writing for yourself brought you into the second act. And you call it your second act because it really is, even though you were already in your 60s.
Yeah. Second act, third act, I don't know. It's my, the next phase. It feels like it's just really coming into myself. I'm going to be 72. I feel so grateful that I get to wake up every day excited about what it is that I'm doing. I'm connecting with people all over the world. My life story writing courses for men and women. My life review courses is for women. It's a process. What I've accepted is that I'm not going to do it all perfectly, but I need to take the step. And when I take the step, then I learn something, and then I can take another step, and then I learn something, and I can get better and refine it. And now I know that I'm not shrinking away. I'm not saying no to something that's important to me. And I'm saying no to things that in the past I would have said yes to just because I wanted to people please or because it sounded appealing or, something. But now I'm staying truly aligned with what's most important to me right now. It was reflecting on my story. I'm continuing to write my stories all the time. I'm continuing to learn new things. I can start a story and then, a year later, it's like, oh, something else, insight that came out of it. So it's a journey. It's totally a journey, but it's a beautiful self-discovery journey. And from it, then by looking at our story, who knows where we can go? Like I said, it could be another career. It could be capturing it to be able to share and to have influence. It could be realizing our own abilities, what we have to offer as mentors to others. A lot of women I know in this second chapter are looking at how can we serve now? We're wanting to do work that's more soul aligned. The first half of our life, we're kind of ego driven, I think, for the most part. But now it's like we want things that nourish our soul. And and I can't imagine not having something like that in my life.
And I bet you feel like you don't ever have to retire because you're living your purpose, like I mentioned.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it's been a process, as you know. I've worked really hard, but I'm now at this place where I'm able to kind of take a little bit more breath, have a little bit more spaciousness, feel like I've got, I'm feeling really proud. I've got a software now that I've created with the help of developers where people can write their stories. I've got my signature programs in place. And so I feel really happy with where it's come to.
Yeah. And so I want to hear about your programs for everyone. Do you have a story in mind of someone who took the story writing and turned it around to reinvent herself and maybe launch some kind of career that she never would have done without going through the story writing?
I think the story about the 80-year-old woman finding purpose and being able to stand up and start speaking. Another woman who did the life review course and reflecting on her life ended up leaving a position. She had actually started a nonprofit and she had a lot of attachment to it, but she came to be clear that it was time to let go of it. And so now she's writing her book. And that was in her, but it took her going through this process to really be able to let go. Another woman entered the program thinking she was looking for the next career within the industry that she had been trained in, and ended up deciding no. She and her husband sold their property and moved to a farm in the Midwest and have started doing something that was in her passion for that. So, women who have been career moms and are empty nesters are now looking at what is in them, what's in their heart, what's in their soul, what have they been good at in their work, in their volunteer work, and what things that they've done in their past as what's their next chapter too. So it's a lot of different women in retirement who are now looking for where they want to volunteer their time. Mentoring has come up now as a big one, recognizing the wisdom that we actually carry and having that confidence to accept that we have something to share, and looking for where we can take that.
That's so great because that's what keeps us young and keeps us going, keeps us healthy. Is to live in that state. So you have a program coming up right away, and then you have one, I think, in June. Can you tell us about the two programs and how people can join?
Sure. The one that's starting at the end of March, and people can sign up through the beginning of April too, is my self-guided, self-paced 12-week course. It's online, called Uncover the Hidden Gems in Your Life Story. And so each week a new set of lessons unfolds when you sign up. And when you sign up, you get the first module, the first set of lessons. And that is a process of self-discovery, taking people on a journey who want to capture their life stories. So many people have been gifted subscriptions to life story writing programs that have prompts, and they've tried it, but the writing prompts they find are very superficial. They write something in response to the prompt, but they don't feel very satisfied with what they've written. So my course is intended to help you write stories that are meaningful. But the first phase of that is self-discovery. It's not just responding to the prompt. It's really understanding not just what happened, but why it happened, why it was meaningful. And so my course is all focused on that process. And that's what Uncover the Hidden Gems in Your Life Story is all about, is taking people through that process, helping them learn how to write. I mean, we've got incredible tools now available to help us with spelling and grammar, and even as a writing editor, artificial intelligence is incredible. So there's no excuse anymore for people to think they're not a good writer, but we don't want to use those tools until we've really dived deep into who we are and what we want to share. And that's what's so important. This is a process of self-discovery. People get confused about what life story writing is, and they think sometimes it's memoir or autobiography. Autobiography is details from birth to present about your life. It's for famous people. It's not what we're doing. Memoir is more like Elizabeth Gilbert's Eat, Pray, Love. It's about a certain theme, her self-discovery experience during a certain particular period of one's life. Life story writing is really freeing. It's a collection of stories. It doesn't all have to have a central theme, but each story needs to be meaningful. Or, or it can just be a fun family vacation sharing. I mean, everyone doesn't have to be deep and meaningful, but most stories, if you want your stories to resonate with your readers, you want to find what's meaningful in your story, and you want to find something that's called the universal theme. It's like themes of finding first love, or of, taking that courageous step into the unknown, of things that people can relate to. So you want to find the theme in your story. And that's what this course is all about.
You mentioned there was a second course. I think that starts in June, and it's very different, and it's about transition, or it's life review.
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. So that's the one I currently have going on right now, the woman I talked about, the group that's of women between 40 and 80. That is live. We meet 90 minutes a week for 12 weeks. So it's also 12 weeks, but this one is live. It's not about writing our stories, but it's reflecting on our lives. And it's for women who are wanting to take inventory and wanting to really kind of understand, heal, let go of any baggage, identify where the strengths and gifts are, where the heart and soul is of their lives, to help with them showing up in their next chapter in the way that, with intention, the way that they want to. And that's called Your Life in Review. So that's live. We meet as a group on Zoom once a week. And so while the Uncover the Hidden Gems in Your Life Story is self-paced with 3 live Q&A sessions, the Your Life in Review is all on Zoom and live. And then there are explorations, homework assignments that come after each class of things to explore further for those who want to dive deeper.
Oh, and I know this is your baby. You have put just so much time and money into creating your own software program.
Yes.
So it's very, very comprehensive and special. It's nothing that is off the shelf. I'm just so proud of you, and I hope people check it out, because I know it's wonderful. How do they find out more? Can we send them to your beautiful website?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. journeytolegacy.com. And from there, they can look at my different course offerings. They can sign up for my free guide if they want to get a sense of what, life story writing is all about. They can look at either the life story class, the life review class, and then from time to time, I offer what I call the memoir class, which is a 6-month course that just happens every now and then. And that's a whole nother episode.
Well, I know you're just glowing. So, and I know you found your unique ability here.
Yeah, well, and thank you for supporting me and supporting women in doing this, because you've done it too. You have, you're continuing to thrive and give and be passionate and supporting others doing that. So thank you for what you're doing.
Well, thanks so much. It's been wonderful having you here.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Everyone, please do visit her website, Journey to Legacy. You'll love it. And we hope you'll come join our community at Join Smart Women, so you'll know everything going on. And just remember to go out and live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity.